Hi, thanks for taking the time to learn about Eugene's Approved Street Tree Species List Update project. This is Mark Snyder, Eugene's urban forester. I'll guide you through this slideshow and let you know how you can find out more and how you can give us your thoughts and comments. You can view and download these three project documents from Eugene's Parks and Open Space Tree Planting webpage. An informational flyer describing the projects with frequently asked questions and answers, the draft list of trees itself, and the approval criteria document that details the criteria and evaluation statements we established in selecting suitable trees for Eugene. The City Council adopted the Urban Forest Management Plan in 1992 as the main policy document guiding the care and regulation of trees in the city. An outgrowth of one of the plan's goals was a 1996 ordinance establishing the Developer Street Tree Program, which requires street trees to be planted in new development projects, such as residential subdivisions. The approved species list was adopted as an appendix to those regulations. The city does have the ability to make exceptions to the list, but not if it's for development projects. We can make changes to the list of trees as needed, and I'll go into the reasons we're doing this update in a moment. The only changes we've made since its adoption have been the removal of sweet gum and Norway maple. The sweet gum due to sidewalk damage and the Norway maple because it's invasive. We're updating the list now for the first time since 2004. We're removing trees from the list that we found to be invasive in our natural areas, trees that are overplanted or that we know are susceptible to disease or insect attack, and trees that are failing in the landscape or that are frequently causing damage or are high maintenance trees. We're adding native trees and non-native ornamental and shade trees that are non-invasive and that will prove to be low maintenance and durable in the tough environment of street tree planting strips. We want to add trees that will provide habitat for local wildlife as well as environmental benefits for everybody in Eugene. We want trees that will be resilient to the difficult growing environments predicted for the upper Willamette Valley in the next several decades, higher temperatures, longer and more frequent summer droughts, and more frequent extreme weather events. Finally, we want to add trees that will perform well in swales and more highly engineered stormwater facilities. Here's an example of a tree that will be removed from the list. On the left is an all too common picture of a raywood ash tree uprooting from the base. This ash also has brittle wood that often fails from structurally unsound branch unions. The tree on the right, a Willamette Valley ponderosa pine, is a native tree that we want to plant more of because evergreen trees like this reduce stormwater runoff by intercepting rainfall during the winter when the leaves of deciduous trees like the ash have already fallen. These are the criteria elements we tested to help us select new trees for Eugene. We want to plant more native trees. In selecting other non-native ornamentals and shade trees, we want to be sure they're not invasive or toxic. We need street trees to be low maintenance, and we want to expand the list to help us achieve a greater diversity of species that will be more resistant to insect and disease attack, and that will be resilient in the face of predicted weather pattern changes. And we're updating the list to add trees suitable for planting in stormwater facilities. We identified native trees as trees that were growing in the Willamette Valley before Euro-American settlement that occurred roughly between 1825 and 1850. The trees on the left were already on the approved list as native trees. We added the native trees on the right. Species on the top are deciduous, those on the bottom are evergreen. We did not approve three native trees, bitter cherry, western chokecherry, and red alder, due to high maintenance concerns. Here's a photo of a forest being invaded by Norway maple, already banned from our list because it was taking over the naturally wooded areas at Skinner's Butte and in Hendricks Park. This tree produces such dense shade it makes it impossible for our native plants to grow, and it can completely alter our natural ecosystems. We've encountered similar invasiveness problems with horse chestnut trees and sweet cherry trees in the forested areas of Hendricks Park. Bradford pears and other Cowrie pears are invading Amazon Park, other natural areas, and our West Eugene wetlands. We researched and evaluated every species to be sure we did not approve the planting of a tree that would cause these problems. Some research suggests that the nectar of silver linden tree, a European relative of our own little leaf linden, might itself be a narcotic and toxic to Pacific Northwest bumblebees, which are already in decline. Until further research or studies clarify why our native bumblebees are dying when they feed on flowers of silver linden, we want to avoid planting these trees. Experienced urban forestry staff, arborists certified by the International Society of Arboriculture who have been planting and caring for Eugene trees for many decades, worked to develop a 3-point rating system. Poor, fair, and good were assigned 1, 2, and 3 points respectively for each of the 8 maintenance elements listed here. With a total possible score of 24, only those species that scored at least 14 points passed this criteria filter and were accepted as low-maintenance street trees, required under policy adopted in the Urban Forest Management Plan. Catastrophic loss of millions of American elms lining streets in the nation's cities due to Dutch elm disease several decades ago taught us to diversify our tree species instead of planting all the same tree up and down the streets. An industry rule of thumb is to avoid having any one tree species comprise more than 10% of the total street trees in a city, no one genus more than 20%, and no one family of trees more than 30%. Running the numbers showed us that maples have been overplanted. The maple genus makes up over 21.5% of all the street trees in Eugene, so we will temporarily stop planting maples, except the native vine maple and the bigleaf maple, until this larger population grows enough to show the maple percentage falling below that 20% threshold. Predictions for temperature and precipitation changes indicate growing conditions in Eugene will be more like a Mediterranean type of climate, similar to geographic regions farther south, such as southern Oregon and parts of California. Here are some specifics of the changes we can expect locally and throughout the state. Higher temperatures, less summer rainfall, and an increase in the frequency of severe weather events such as windstorms and ice and snow events. In rating trees for climate resilience, we considered those species that would withstand winter cold by using the USDA hardiness zone maps, summer heat using the American Horticultural Society heat zone rating of being able to withstand a minimum number of days above 86 degrees, trees that would be tolerant of insect and disease attack, as rated in the low maintenance criteria filter, and trees that would be able to withstand severe weather and storm damage, also as rated in our low maintenance criteria filter. 75 species were given this designation when evaluating using these factors. This facility next to Hayward Field is typical in that it shows the artificial environment that was engineered and constructed to filter pollutants from and slow the velocity of rainfall and stormwater runoff from streets in order to improve water quality in our rivers. There is sometimes no direct connection between a tree and native soil in facilities like this. Frequently, there's an underdrain that's buried in gravel, covered by landscape fabric with 12 inches of soil media placed on top to allow for plant growth. When the facility eventually gets clogged and ceases to function, all of the plants will likely be removed and the facility reconstructed and replanted to allow for proper functioning again. Nobody really knows how trees will grow in these artificial demanding environments long term, so we'll be watching them closely to learn and to possibly add trees that do succeed to our regular list later. In the meantime, this update approves trees already vetted for planting in the right-of-way in the city's Stormwater Management Manual adopted at the beginning of 2014. The current approved species list has 76 trees approved for right-of-way planting. Of the 227 species we filtered through our criteria elements, 185 are proposed to be allowed. Developers, landscape architects, landscape contractors, and individual homeowners, residents, and volunteers will have a much larger menu to use in selecting trees to plant. And because we proactively screen these species with tough conditions in mind, we're more confident that our tree canopy will establish successfully and thrive long-term to provide shade and other ecosystem service benefits for everybody in Eugene. With this draft updated list, we've removed trees that we found to be invasive, trees that frequently fail in the landscape, and trees that are high maintenance. We've objectively evaluated and ranked more than 220 trees, and we're recommending 185 species. This is a working list in that we've been conducting outreach to stakeholder groups and the public for further comment. We plan to finalize the list and adopt it in an administrative rule change process by the end of this year. By creating this new approach to testing tree candidates for suitability in Eugene, we plan to update the list on a more frequent basis using these same tools and others refined and updated as needed. For more information, you can view and download project documents from Eugene's Parks and Open Space tree planting webpage. You can also send comments or ask questions using the contact information here. Thanks again for taking the time to listen and to watch this presentation. I really do appreciate your interest in trees for Eugene. Bye for now.